The local MP here, as you know, is the Prime Minister, and he's going to Buckingham Palace today.
That's right.
To announce the start of the election. How do you feel about the election coming? Is it exciting?
Nah, it doesn't really bother me.
Excited? Worried?
Dubious as usual.
I'm not taking that much interest in politics at the minute.
Excuse me, can we ask you two questions? About how are you going to vote, do you know?
Just whatever I feel like on the day.
It could be anybody.
Could be.
We're starting this decisive phase of our road trip where Brown himself started at Kirkcaldy High School. Now, school's out for Easter, but inside there's a small group of hard-bitten students revising for their hires. And while we're here, we should bear one thing in mind. The motto of this school, as Brown himself is very fond of reminding us, is "I will try my utmost."
I'm particularly excited because I can vote in this election.
Right, your first time?
Yeah, my first time, yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Do you feel when you switch on the television and see politicians that they have something to say to you?
Well, yeah, because it's our vote. Well, it will soon be our vote that they're relying on.
Does the Labour Party, do you think, speak to and for the people perhaps who aren't doing so well?
Maybe not as much as they could, because they're trying to appeal to a wider range of people so they can stay in power.
Possibly the Labour Party take for granted working class votes, especially in Scotland, I think.
Labour might have forgotten their roots a bit, but the Conservatives won't.
I think a Tory government would increase support for the independence movement.
Tell me about your understanding of the SNP and what they're here to do.
Well, obviously their goal is for an independent Scotland.
Yeah. Does it run wider into a view of society, though, and, you know, the gap between the rich and poor? And
It does, because I think Scotland it does have its own political identity.
one of the seats where Labour's really only clinging on to a very slim majority is right next to Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath. I'm on my way there now to the seat of Ochil and South Perthshire. Labour's about 500 votes ahead of the SNP. It's also a seat with a strong tradition of big support for the Conservatives. And if the SNP is going to increase its influence at Westminster as part of the long crawl to Scottish independence, this is one seat it's definitely got to win.
I think this seat, because of its makeup, will always be a tight seat. I don't think you're ever going to find, anybody comfortably winning this seat. There's Clackmannanshire, which has got quite an industrial past, compared with Kinrossshire and South Perthshire, where there's very, very rural communities, very, very different parts of the constituency, and it's very, very big.
What's the Labour offer at this election?
Well,
I ask you that in the context of things like Alistair Darling, for example, saying that we're in for tougher spending cuts than Mrs Thatcher, and watching the Chancellor's debate and at points wondering what exactly the difference was, you know.
Well, I think there are differences. If you look over the last couple of years, you've seen clear differences of how the Conservative Party would have handled the economy and how the Labour Party's handled the economy. Very, very different, and they're very, very different.
But the policy looking to the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but that's where we're going from. The Labour Party is based on what we've done over the last 2 years.
And what's your message to people who voted SNP? How do you get them back?
Well, hopefully they'll be able to look at my record over the last 5 years and see how I've served the communities. Secondly, I hope they will realise that a vote for the SNP in Scotland is a backdoor opportunity for the Tories. We've already seen how the SNP are cuddling up to the Conservatives.
I'm Annabelle Ewing, your SNP candidate. Pleased to meet you. In this Westminster seat, we nearly got there. We were just 600 odd votes short, so we're hoping very much this time, by working very hard.
We just come from Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath, which I think even you'll agree is rock solid Labour.
Maybe some years ago you could have described a place in Scotland as rock solid Labour. I mean, this seat, it's clearly a two-horse race between the SNP and Labour.
Does that mean you solicit the votes of Tories to tactically vote against Gordon Brown?
Well, there are many people out there that really are not very keen on Gordon Brown and indeed what Labour has done for 13 years.
It sounds like you've got a pitch for Tory voters that works. I'm wondering what it is.
The opportunity for each and every voter in this constituency is to have a strong voice for them in the House of Commons with me, the SNP candidate.
You're sort of ducking the question a little bit for fear of being seen to make common cause with Tories.
No, I'm not ducking the question. I'm just trying to explain to you the way things are. There has been a gradual shift towards the SNP in Scotland, and that must be people coming from all different persuasions. We do not support the NIC tax hike at this point. Small business have got enough on their plate to cope with without this additional tax on jobs. And make no mistake, that's what it is.
You sound, when we talk about things like that, like quite a sort of tax-phobic centre-right politician, and yet my understanding from the outside of the SNP is a party that plays for Labour votes as a progressive force on the centre-left. So is there a question there of making your mind up? You can't be both things at once.
Well, I have to say I would sort of challenge the premise of your question. I mean, the SNP puts the interests of the people of Scotland first. In Scotland, the key motor of the economy is the small business sector.
What about the 50p tax rate on incomes over £150,000 a year?
I am not sure at the end of the day if that sends the right signals, but the SNP has, as far as I'm aware, no plans to...
Sends the right signals in what term?
Well, in the end of the day, so when you make, your money with The Guardian and go on to other things, you might find that, you feel a bit done down by. But the SNP is...
I feel all right about paying my contributions. You've changed my mind a bit now, I think. In the sense that if I lived here and was minded for all the reasons I have for having problems with this government's record, probably if you'd have asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I'd have thought if I'd lived here, hypothetically, I'd be a natural SNP voter as a sort of disgruntled Labour voter. But talking to you now, I'd worry that I was voting for, as I say, a sort of tax-phobic, light-touch regulation, pro-business, centre-right party. It's been a really long day. I've driven from coastal post-industrial Kirkcaldy into the Ochils, the mountainous area here. I've met a lot of people, a few party candidates, a lot of activists, and I have to say, what I haven't heard yet is really fundamental differences between the parties contesting this seat and indeed the parties who are contesting this election. I wonder, in 1945, did it feel like this? In 1979, did it feel like this? I keep reading and hearing a lot about this being a really important election and a historical fork in the road, but really, this seems to me so far to be about the war of small distinctions, nicking a few votes here and there, maybe trying to get your vote out. And this perhaps is where we discover, contrary to certain people's expectations, the Conservative Party might be the political force at the end of the rainbow. How are you all feeling?
Very good.
Yeah, we're all buoyed up, ready to go. We're taking no prisoners. We're going to win. And I think we'll win just.
Okay.
A lot of our voters mistakenly voted tactically last time, and I think a lot of them, thinking that we couldn't win, some of them voted Labour to keep the SNP out, and others voted SNP to keep the Labour Party out, and 2,800 odd that we'd already canvassed didn't even vote at all. Which part are you going to support any particular?
Undecided yet.
Undecided?
Yeah. A lot of things.
Have you ever voted Conservative before?
No, not yet.
No, time for a change?
Possibly. I voted for Labour a few years ago. I voted for SNP last year.
What might make up your mind one way or the other? What do you want to hear?
I want to hear less each party bashing each other, less of that. I want to hear truthfulness, honesty.
I want people to stop thinking they can get everything for nothing. You have to work for what you get, really.
More of that.
She's one for you.
We'll give you
It's our turn. It's our turn. He's voted for the other three. It's our turn this time.
Okay, thanks for your time. Thank you.
Oh, that was looked at Labour voters. They've deserted to the SNP. They're not happy with the SNP, and they'll find their way to the Conservatives.
What are the SNP doing to sort of court your voters, as you understand it?
They're just mirroring our policies. Yeah. It's the oldest trick in the book. You just say, oh yes, what do you want? They've surveyed our people, they've sent out questionnaires to Conservative voters, and they've asked them, what do you want? And now they're just repeating it back.
Policy. So examples of that. What kind of policies do you think they've... You're the pro-business party.
We are the pro-people party and the pro-business people party.
That's what the SNP said to us 2 hours ago.
Well, they will do, because they're copy. They want our voters.
We started today talking to that group of people aged between 16 and 18 at Kirkcaldy High School. Now, I was that age quite a while ago. The election I remember the clearest, really, was when I was 17 in 1987, and Neil Kinnock squared up to Mrs Thatcher, and there was a real sense of a clash of ideologies, of a debate about the fundamentals. Travelling around today, I haven't really felt that at all. Parties have fallen over each other, it seems, to nick each other's ideas. There's a conversation about whose cuts are going to be the deepest and most convincing. This isn't really about politics painted in primary colours. Thus far, everything feels vague and messy and uncertain and confused, including, in fact, the result. We've got 3.5 weeks to go, and I hope this story is going to become a bit clearer. But right now, I have to say, I feel pretty confused.